Good morning, everybody. Today I'm explaining a great poem written by Wilfred Owen, one of the greatest poets of the First World War. And that poet hated war a lot and expressed it in most of his poems. His poem is entitled The Anthem for Doomed Youth. Anthem means something like a song for doomed youth. The word doomed youth means or refers to such soldiers or such young people are doomed and condemned to die. He means dying in battle, of course, or dying in war. That's why he wrote so many great poems expressing his hatred to such horrible wars. This poem is a sonnet divided into two parts, and of course we know that any sonnet is divided into two parts. The first part is called octet and the second part is called sestet. But in the exam, if I ask you to compare octet and sestet in Anthem for Doomed Youth, don't say that. Don't give me the basic definition of a sonnet, and don't say it is divided into octet and sestet. The octet is 8 lines and sestet is 6 lines. Of course not. We are asking for something else, to give me the main ideas included in the octet and the other ideas or the main theme of the sestet. So let's start our explanation. Wilfred Owen is talking or describing the horrible things accompanying war. At the beginning he says that what passing bills for these who die as cattle. Here he describes the soldiers who die in action or in battle to be like animals or cattle. And in the exam, if I ask you about this part, why does the poet describe the death of soldiers to be like the death of cattle or animals? You will give me this answer. You will say, describing the soldiers to die like animals or like cattle. This gives us 3 points. The first one is that the number of the soldiers is so great and big. The second point, you will say that the number or the soldiers who die in action and battle and their lives are seen by officials of having little value. We mean that the officials or the big officers or the men in power don't care about their lives, and they see that their lives have little value. The third point, you will say that the soldiers don't know the reason for the death, don't know why it is they are dying for, so they don't know the reason for their death. In the octet he starts with explaining the sounds that accompany funeral or the normal funeral, but he replaced such sounds with the sounds of war. At the beginning or the first point, he says that the bells that announce the death of soldiers who die like animals at great numbers and so on are replaced with the sound of the anger of the guns or the angry guns. And here we have an image, the anger of guns. The image is personification. He personifies guns to be angry like people. So the first point in the octet, the poet says or speaks about the sound of the bells that announce the death of soldiers are replaced with the sounds of guns that look angry during war, of course. The second point in the octet, the poet asks about the prayers that happen or occurs during the funeral of such soldiers or dead people, but such prayers are replaced with the rapid firing of rifles. The rapid firing of rifles. Here we have another point. The sound that should be heard during normal funeral is replaced with a sound comes from war. which is the rapid firing of rifles. Okay? In the third point in this octet, the poet says that we'll have no rituals, no prayers, no bells, and no sounds, and no choir singing for them, but we'll hear only the bursting shells, or the sound of shells that explode during war. So the poet wants to describe how horrible war is, talking about what should happen during normal funerals, honoring such soldiers, and what really exists during war, or during such bad and horrible war. And finally he explained that the only sound we hear during war is the sound of the horn of the British countryside announce their death. That is the end of the explanation or the paraphrase of the octet. Concerning the sestet, the poet is talking now about the visual rituals that accompany the death of soldiers. In the visual rituals, we should have candles, we should have the pole that covers the coffin of soldiers or dead soldiers, and we should have flowers that are thrown over their coffins. But instead of such visual rituals, he replaced all of these rituals with some images. The first one, he says, what candle may be held to speed them all, not in the hands of the boys, but in their eyes. He means that we'll have no candles to light during the funeral of such soldiers who die in battle or during their funerals, but their love will shine in the eyes of the boys. Second point in the sestet, the poet talks about the pallor or the pall, which is a kind of cloth that covers the coffin of soldiers or dead soldiers, of course. And such a pallor or pall, I mean the white cloth covering the coffins, will be replaced by the paleness of girlish faces. And the last point of the visual rituals, we talk about the flowers. We normally throw some flowers or put some flowers on the coffin of soldiers, but here such flowers are replaced with the tender and the gentle thoughts of people left behind. So there will be no flowers, but the only flowers will be the gentle thoughts of people left behind. And the only thing that we can see as a sign of mourning and expressing sadness and so on, that all houses pull down the blinds. The word the blinds here means the curtains. They pull down curtains as a sign of mourning over such dead soldiers who die like animals or like cattle or sheep during battle or during actions of war. So it's a very sad song expressing the difference between the sounds accompany funerals replaced with the sounds of war, and also the visual rituals that should happen during war or during the funeral of soldiers, and they are replaced by some images. So the poem is a sonnet, consists of two parts, and in the exam, of course, if I ask you about the main theme or the main ideas of such poem, you are going to talk about the horrible things that happen during war, and that the poet hates war and expresses that in his poem. He says that the soldiers die like animals, and we don't have time or don't have the chance to use any visual rituals or any sounds during their funerals, but everything is replaced by the horrible sounds of war. And if I ask you about picking out some figures of speech, here we have one of the figures of speech. The first one, the soldiers die as cattle. It is a simile. He describes the death of the soldiers or the